Cloud. All right, there we go. So the speaker, Warren, um, I've known Warren for many years. I don't know how many years, Warren. He's overseen the open innovation product programs for several industry leading companies, including Lifetime Brands in the housewares and tabletop arenas, Farberware, KitchenAid, and 40 other brands. Tektronix Industries, which is different from the Tektronix oscilloscopes that I know and love. Power Tool Group, Hardware Industries, Ryobi, Rigid, Hart Tools, and other brands. Merchant media and direct response television category, True Touch, Perfect Pasta, and others. He's done so many different things, and I've actually bought some of his products, including the Mr. Misto, the gourmet olive oil sprayer that you pump up. Although lately I've gotten lazy and I just buy the pressurized stuff and it squirts out just fine. And he's come up with so many different products, and he brings them to market so that inventors can continue to invent and just sit back and rake in the big bucks from royalties. So Warren, without further ado, I'm going to give you, do you need to be co-host?
No.
Okay. Then you have the floor.
It's too much pressure to be co-host. Doug, thank you so much. And I think this is my fourth talk with the Fairfield Club. And of course, I was a member for many years. I lived nearby in New Canaan. And I actually, when I was growing up as a kid, lived in Fairfield for a short period of time. This is, Doug, I have to say, you've really done a great job growing the group. And you guys are an intimidating bunch. I'm just in consumer goods. You're all into some just amazing projects and sophisticated things, which obviously reflect Doug's love of engineering and other sophisticated high-end projects. So hopefully I can speak tonight and you can gain something from it. I wanted to say to John Pepper in your opening remarks, I was just speaking to the Kansas City Club last night, and a woman has a medical device product and she wanted to hook up with someone. So I'll just generally say this. My email, folks, is www.tuttle, that's two W's, www.tuttle@yahoo.com. And anybody that wants to send me an email or later has other questions, I'll always get back to you within a couple of days. John, I'd love it if you reach out, because if you have any interest in helping others or maybe pointing them in the right direction. I know a few people in the area, but not a lot. So, so I have spent the last 25 years in the inventor space. Not to be confused with the sophisticated work that you guys are doing in a lot of cases. I work mostly with grassroots inventors. Doug, I'm happy to say that I've spoken, you're the 32 now inventor clubs that I've spoken to over the last 8 weeks to launch the book all over America. I've been very involved in the United Inventors Association, which is a nonprofit 501c3 nationally, that I have a lot of relationships with a lot of inventor clubs and inventors around the country, so it's been great at getting out. Based upon the years of effort, really it started with my being a member of IACT back in the 2005 or so. I got involved with IACT, and it was really my interest there in coming to meetings. Fairfield University was kind to host them, and elsewhere at the public library in Fairfield. I eventually got on the national UIA board. So, and I was for 12 years the president. So I blame that entirely on IACT, my interest there. But that was a parallel path to basically launching a number of products. And I'm basically today, now I'll start at the end of the movie, like Lawrence of Arabia, you know, when he dies on the motorcycle, then we'll go back to the beginning. But basically today, besides all my UIA efforts, which I just stepped down from the presidency last month, and I'm on, by the way, also 5 other nonprofit national councils. I'm on the, let's see now, I'm on the National Pro Bono Patent Commission, an original member, which helps people at the poverty line or near the poverty line get patents without, if they don't have the resources to get them for free. We have 22 hubs around the country. I'm on the Department of Commerce National Council for the Empowerment of American Innovation, which is an effort to get more minorities, women, military and rural folks into the innovation space. And I'm on the United States Intellectual Property Association, which is an effort to educate more of Americans about patents and intellectual property. So I give a lot of time between that and the UIA. back to nonprofit causes to try to educate people. But the other hat that I wear is I run open innovation programs, as Doug mentioned. I do run a very successful open innovation program for the largest housewares company in the United States called Lifetime Brands. They're LCUT on the NASDAQ. They're based in Garden City, Long Island, which is close enough for me to get down to in normal times. I have not been there since last March. Go figure, right? So we have virtual Zoom meetings and regular meetings now, but it's a little bit interesting. Interesting enough, as a housewares company with 40,000 products, they've had by far the best year they ever had in their history, a record year. So there are some companies thriving during these times. But as Doug said, I also did it for many years. I ran the Open Innovation Program, which is basically bridging companies with inventors outside their walls for Tektronix Industries. They made Ryobi, Rigid, and Milwaukee Power Tools. That ended last summer, partly because of the pandemic and partly because of new management. I am working with Home Depot behind the scenes on a couple of things. And I hope to, when the pandemic is over, make some other announcements there. And then I'm in the DRTV space, the direct response television space, which all those infomercials, those late night infomercials. And I had a huge hit years ago called Smart Spin. And now, as Doug mentioned, our big hit is True Touch gloves that you can put on, pet your dog, and groom them at the same time, which we've sold over 4 million of those to date. So let me, that's where I am today. Let me back up. I basically wrote the book, Inventor Confidential, which is now available on Amazon. Shameless plug. It's the #1, Doug, it's the #1 new launch for the last 8 or 9 days in product development and engineering, I think. And I'm in the top 20 overall already. I've gotten off to a great start. But basically, I have a lot of knowledge in my head about taking goods to market and helping inventors. And so eventually, I set about writing this book, which took about 2 years to write. And thanks to COVID, got launched about 6 months later than it should have. But it's finally out. It's finally here. And I'll come back and talk a little bit about the book. But before I do that, I'll just quickly go back and explain how I kind of got here, because the inventor part is interesting. So I'm not sure how far back to go, but I'll go back to when I was 12 years old and lived in Fairfield. I had a paper route. I played for the local Little League baseball team. I shoveled sidewalks in the snowstorms. When I was 16, I actually moved to Switzerland when I was a kid. My dad worked for GE. So I grew up over there, came back. My brother attended Roger Ludlow High School, was the starting quarterback in 1968. So we sort of had a Fairfield or Connecticut-based family upbringing to some degree, but then moved to Europe, grew up overseas in Europe because my dad got transferred over, and then came back to college here in the United States. So I'm what they call a third world kid. I sort of was exposed for 5 years to life outside the United States. It was quite the transition, an eye-opening transition, especially back then in 1967, moving overseas. All that I learned, and then when I came back, I had to re-enter society, American society. So I'm basically a third world kid, which I describe in the book as people are pretty open-minded about looking at things. But when I came back, typically a lot of my peers and kids my age had no interest in hearing about anything outside the United States. But it was an interesting background, and sort of led me, I think, to in a direction where I always wanted to be my own boss. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and so forth. But before I did that, I started working at a department store in New York City called Abraham and Straus. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of Abraham and Straus, but for those who did, it was a great store out of Brooklyn, New York. The Brooklyn store was the third biggest single standing store in the world. It's now a Macy's, and we had stores in Westchester County, Long Island, Queens, and New Jersey, and Brooklyn. And it was a great place to get trained. I went there to be in my own business. I ended up working in the cookware and housewares departments and small electrics buyer. And I spent 6 years there. And when I left there, I really wanted to get out of New York. I didn't want to spend my life living in New York. I came back to Connecticut, and I started in Darien, Connecticut, a store called The Complete Kitchen. It was a Williams-Sonoma sort of high-end cookware store. It's fun now to talk locally because it was on the Post Road. We had about 6,000 products. And I had a cooking school, which had some national renown. Had Julia Child come to visit, and then I got involved in a prepared food store called the Good Food Store, where one of my partners was the iconic actor Paul Newman, who lived in Westport at the time. We did a lot of catering for him, and then I grew it out to other locations in Greenwich, in Wilton, Connecticut, and eventually in Bronxville, New York, and Richfield. And so I had 65 employees, part and full time, and I was racing along. I was also the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I did a downtown Darien revitalization effort, which was very much based on the same effort in Fairfield of fixing up the downtowns and the sidewalks and the stores and bringing life back to the town. So all this stuff is wonderful locally. So I was a real merchant, a real entrepreneur, and doing some exciting things. And one day, this is where the story gets interesting. The guy walks into my shop with this product called Misto, the gourmet olive oil sprayer. Basically, it's a metal container with an FDA-approved plastic liner. Tom lived in Weston, Connecticut, and I know that over the years there was a lot of Weston inventors that were members of IACT, so it's sort of a cool background. Basically allowed one to put their own oil into a container, and by pumping the cap, which is sort of a pressurized system, sort of like a kid's squirt gun, you could build enough pressure in there to, and then the key to the product really was the nozzle, which was a patented nozzle that could handle viscosity. You could spray oil on your food. Now you could spray more oil and spread it out more evenly. I should say you should spray less oil, get more flavor out, spread it out more evenly by using this. But the real key was, and this was back in 1997, the real key was an alternative to Pam. And there's enough cans of Pam sold every year to circumnavigate the globe. And it also uses a low-grade vegetable oil. It also uses a butane fuel, which is not good around flames. And so, bottom line is Misto really was a home run out of the gate. I had my stores, and I asked Tom if he would ship me in some, and he had never hadn't made them yet. He still only had a prototype, which is the first time, not only the first time I met an inventor, but the first time I ever heard the word prototype. And I had launched a lot of new products at my store. I was sort of nationally known because of my background in New York retailing for launching new products. I had launched the espresso coffee system. You know, the capsule system is quite big today. We were the first store in America. The Don V.A. ice cream maker, the Mooley Mincer, the Rima cookie sheets. There was a whole bunch of them in the house refrigerator that I was really good at. So Tom made the first 12, and we launched Misto in my store. I sat at the counter and literally sold them. Sold out of the first batch in an hour. He went back, made 12 more, and the rest was history. He built tooling up in Bethel in a fulfillment center, had 30 people on the line. Eventually, we could make 7,000 Mistos a day. I got them, I teamed up with him, took them out to stores around New England, and then eventually down the East Coast. And then the big sell was we got them into Bloomingdale's and sold 15,000 pieces. That was a huge order for us to start with. Tom built an 8-foot Misto. We took a van right into 59th Street and walked the Misto right up the escalator to the floor, and we started selling them there, and then Macy's picked them up. Long story short, in 1998, we sold 1.2 million Mistos, extremely profitable. It was an unbelievable experience, and I decided then and there that this world of inventing and taking products to market was for me. Over the next 2 years, I sold all my stores. I continued to help Tom, but eventually we parted. He wasn't interested in going on doing other products, and I was quite interested in moving on and helping other inventors. And that's what I did. I joined IACT. I started to get to hear from inventors. I heard all their stories, all their challenges, their dreams, and how often those dreams failed. Bottom line was I learned a great deal. And I took a little bit of time off to decide what I wanted to do. I worked on a couple of other projects. I had a fry pan that had a curved raised edge on the far side so you could saute. Did very well with that. And then I had a complete failure, a product called Stir Chef, which was a saucepan stirring device, which some of you have heard me speak before, have heard me talk about that. I have a whole chapter about failure in the book. And then I came back with a product called Smart Spin, which was a lazy Susan that pulled off the shelf and allowed you to vertically stack within 1 cubic foot, 24 storage containers and their covers. And so that ended up being a big TV hit, and we sold over 12 million of them. And so I had this sort of up and down rocky road. And if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to take half a break here and just take the shade off the window because it's gotten a little dark. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I learned a lot of valuable lessons working hands-on with inventors. I'd had some huge successes. Misto and Smart Spin remain two of the biggest selling items in housewares industry history. And along the way, I also had a massive failure in Stir Chef, which so I learned a great deal about product development, about how to take a product to market. I learned about all the challenges that inventors face. And I also worked with various companies along the way and individuals. And I started to take a snapshot of this crazy industry that we're in. And I learned that there's a lot of different people in this space, and there's a lot of things you have to get up to speed if you're going to be an entry-level inventor and come into the space. And there's a lot of marketers and invention submission companies and coaches and other folks that I'm not sure if I should use the word prey on inventors, but they're continually reaching out, trying to sell services and things to inventors up front. And a lot of them, don't do what they were going to say, or they're not particularly helpful. So a lot of inventors now, mind you, these are grassroots inventors, don't have the resources to do all the things necessary to get to market properly and then pay all these people. And a lot of times they fail. There was a recent poll in Inventors Digest that said 78% of all grassroots inventors think when they have their patent issued that they're going to become millionaires. So this is, I was observing all this stuff, and I got more involved in the UIA, more involved with giving back, fortunately, I had a lot of successes, and I decided that I would change my business model, and rather than try to develop products from scratch and work with inventors and team up with them, that I studied a lot about this concept called open innovation, which is helping big companies. And I had known a lot of the people at Lifetime Brands from my days at A&S, Abraham and Strauss, and they have 40,000 products. They're the biggest producers of kitchen gadgets in the world, and they were always interested in what I was up to. And we came together in 2007, and we put together this remarkable open innovation program, which kind of once again changed my life. I became an outside contractor that then helped them. They have 9 divisions, so I work with 9 division heads, the president of the company, the legal teams, and so forth, to go out and find new products. Now they have already a lot of inventors banging on their door, asking if they'd be interested in licensing their unique technologies, but I also bring a lot of people to the table. And now they were a complete distraction for the company and for the people in the development arenas and who had couldn't talk to inventors all day. So I developed this sort of hero model open innovation program where I help all the inventors that come in. I vet them. I narrow down the list. I do it every day. I did a bunch today. And then I present to this division heads of the companies. They tell me the ones that they like. And then I pursue licensing deals. And bottom line, I've now in the last 15 years, besides running the multiple programs that I've told you, signed over 125 licensing deals, which have collectively generated over $1 billion in retail sales. I've probably worked with over 100,000 inventors, at least, between direct emails, submissions, trade shows, and social media sites, et cetera, et cetera. So I have this lot of knowledge in my head, and a lot of the books that have been written sort of in this space, either are written basic books by inventors that sort of have how-to steps to market, or they're written by marketers who are trying to sell you something in their prowess and sign you up for their programs and so forth. And so I decided I would write this book and talk about the inventing world, particularly from inside of companies and what they look for when they're out licensing and looking for licensing deals, what the discussion that goes on behind the scenes and so forth. That was my particularly unique angle. So I basically wrote, the book is in 2 halves. The first half is pretty mechanical and technical. It talks about this same thing that every inventor faces, how to develop a product from scratch, what questions you have to ask, what steps go first, vetting the market. And I'm very old school on building prototypes, using that experience to help file for intellectual property. I'm old school on all that. You guys probably get a kick out of this. Most inventors are going to skip this chapter, but I do a chapter on Triz and Scamper, which are really, sophisticated corporate innovation programs. I do use a lot of the theories there. You guys would enjoy it. I'm not sure if everybody will get it, but I try to go I tried to go way past. There's a lot of people out there that are just selling ideas and saying you can put it, do a drawing or a CAD or Excel sheet and send it in. I deal with this every day, and I'm trying to go the other way with inventors to explain to them that it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of challenging issues to get to market. And then I have a special section on going to market directly. I call it the 30 steps of going to market directly. I've been there before. It's a pretty good chapter. I've reread it now about 100 times, and it's pretty spot on. Obviously it doesn't get into the details. I was only allowed 225 pages. But it's a pretty good roadmap, at least to get people interested. So that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book, I divide in two more sections. The third quarter, if you would, in the book is called Inventors Beware, BEWARE. I talk about for-profit marketers who are continually roping in inventors, naive inventors in their programs through their social media posts, that these companies have very, very low success rates, the questions to ask and how to vet them before you put out your hard-earned cash. And then I also talk about what's going on in Washington, D.C., which is, I know, Doug, I did one program with you to talk nothing about that. I'm spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill, advocating for inventors, many meetings, and from our Connecticut senators and congressmen, from Blumenthal and Mahoney and everybody down to Himes and so forth, to many of the judiciary members, to people from all states and representatives from all states. The 2012 American Innovation Invent Act was anything but helpful to inventors in a lot of ways. They developed a PTAB, which is a Patent Trial and Appeal Board, review board, which made it very easy to take away patents that have been issued. In fact, when you come back for a PTAB hearing, which anybody can bring you in on, you lose the validity of your patent. I'm actually working on a small claims patent court issue right now with a federal court judge and some people to make it fair. Inventors have a very difficult time defending themselves when patents are issued to them. And it's just a very difficult road. And I talk a lot about what's going on at Capitol Hill and the effect of the big tech companies, which any of the individual big five are bigger than some countries. The five collectively are probably bigger than every country other than China and America. And really what's happening nationally, more patents were filed in China last year than America for the first time. Our patent system, by all accounts, has gone from the #1 in the world, perennially, to #10 now. And basically a loss of confidence from a lot of startups that the system isn't helping them get off the ground. It's benefiting the big tech companies from precluding, under the patent troll moniker, others from getting in the space. I like to say that some of these companies were only started 15 years ago, like Facebook, Google. Well, Google's the real ringleader, 20 years ago, and they had the benefit of a strong patent system to get them off the ground and raise capital. And today, it's much more difficult to do that. So I talk about that a lot, and then I get into my fourth quarter, which is Inventor Be Aware, AWARE, which I talk about crowdfunding, Kickstarter and GoFundMe and other platforms, which I think are really significant developments, in the ability to raise capital, and I think exciting. I talk a lot about trade shows, and no matter what industry you're in, even if you're in engineering or automotive or all that, there's always a trade. There's 30,000 trade shows in America. How to exploit those trade shows. I get into direct response television, the effect of mass marketing through TV, and then I get into a section about organic innovation, why it's important for America, and what we need to do if we want to stay the most innovative country on the planet. And I give everybody a list to do at the end. Everybody. I give the Supreme Court, who has been redefining patents as rather than property rights, which it says right in the Constitution. You can read it. To government franchises, what they can take away. There's a big PTAB case going on now. I'll be interested to see how they rule on it in June. I talk about Capitol Hill, what they can do to better understand technology and protecting innovation. I talk about, big tech companies. It's not all about them, right down to the grassroots inventors and what we all need to do, and marketers who will take your money without you even knowing it. So that's kind of the theme of the book. It's kind of an overarching view of innovation in America with a lot of technical stuff for grassroots people who are new to the industry. So I know some of this stuff will appeal to some of you, and some of it's probably a little below your station perhaps, and you've gotten involved in many more sophisticated things, but I do a lot of speaking on this to inventor clubs and universities and programs around the country. So to the degree that I can be helpful in answering any questions, I'd be happy to. But the book is fun. It's a good read. It's a lot of it's first person singular. So I put my chin out there. And for those who know me, you know, that's the way I am. And, you know, I take everybody on. So that's what it's all about, Doug. Thanks for giving me a few minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Warren. I'm wondering if we should ask the questions through chat or if we should just chime in with the video.
Well, I have one mention on chat, which is Moses, who said, "I remember ANS very well." Thanks, Moses.
So if we do it all through chat to ask the questions, maybe that would be okay.
Paul says I have a misto. Cool.
Yeah, I used to have a misto, but it just leaked.
Yeah, it's meant to be repurchased.
I see. It's planned obsolescence.
Planned obsolescence, exactly.
Doug, I don't
Yeah.
think you, people with phones can do chat. I don't think
People all right. Well, if you can't do a chat, I guess you'll just chime in with the
Yeah.
video and the audio then.
Please. I know Mark's got some questions.
Yeah, Mark Roser here. I've got a couple of questions. I'll first leading off with, just wanted to speak to Warren. For other people who don't know him or haven't worked with him, you know, I've brought ideas to Warren and have had the utmost respect from him. I still want you to buy my leveraged cutting board or help me sell that, but nothing but good thing and respect for the way that you guided me through Lifetime Brands and their process, and felt like it was very, very fair. And I learned a lot in the process too, and look forward to future submissions. You know, right now, as I sit working on medical devices, there's two areas in Eastern Connecticut I'm not strong at. One is finding help with prototyping certain aspects, and the other is helping find people who are really good at business development. And I know you've mentioned things like inventor help companies and professional organizations that try to help inventors. But you know, what's the equivalent? I wish there was we have the IACT. Is there an independent marketers of Connecticut meeting that happens every month for people who just love to sell things? And
hey, there's a void there, Mark. You should. I was thinking as I was reading your questions that thanks for giving me in advance. You should. Yeah. Maybe there's a void there. But listen, I have a couple of thoughts because I've been so busy, you know, with the book just launched. It was hard for me to really respond to you the other day, but I have been thinking about your questions. But and you can follow up on them. But so I'm going to answer in reverse, like I usually do. The marketing companies throughout America, quite frankly, all frighten me. Okay, and the more I know about them, you know, sometimes the more you learn about someone or an institution, the more you understand it, the more you get it. The more I learn about them, the more I realize they're just marketing to grassroots inventors. If you see someone out there that supposedly can help you, either license your product or get it to market, and they come in different shapes and sizes. You need, and they're 99.5% that they charge you up front, and that should be a red flag that goes up. When someone charges you up front, now it's one thing if someone charges you up front to build your prototype. I get that. There's materials involved. They got to go on the hook. If a patent attorney or an attorney charges you up front, you know, they have a legal obligation to do that. They're not going to work on the back end. I get all that, and when it's a legitimate product or services. But for a lot of these folks, it's just air that they're selling. And so when they charge you, you need to ask some questions. And I go through that deliberately in the book. You need to ask them, you know, what am I getting for my money? Because they seem to take your money and then they're nowhere to be found. Even when they put you through a multi-month coaching program, you're on your own. And by the way, Mark, a lot of these companies don't bother to vet what you're working on. They have no expertise on or know your odds of getting to market. I had just an inventor yesterday that had the goofiest housework product I've ever seen. He spent $3,000 in the coaching program. And someone should have told him right off the bat, this is never going to make it, you know, and saved his money. And by the way, it gets worse. I had two people who recently who qualified for the pro bono patent assistant program, which means they're at the poverty line, and they borrowed $3,000 to take this course, and they got nothing out of it. And this I see this all the time repeatedly. It breaks my heart. So if someone's going to charge you for an educational course, make sure you can afford it. Now, look, if you're a surgeon and you're inventing something on the side and you want to take a course and $3,000 is no problem, then whatever. I'm not talking to you necessarily, but you got to ask, what's their success rate? Okay, if they've run these courses before, how many people have gone through the class? Because a lot of them are like factories, and who are they actually working with? A lot of times it's coaches down the line. And then what is the success rate? And by the way, signing a licensing deal is not the definition of success, okay? I've signed many licensing deals that had no financial success. So I write the book from that standpoint for profit and keeping your head on a swivel. Now, when it comes to product development, we could talk about, Mark, a couple of things depending upon the sophistication. You guys, you specifically work on some pretty sophisticated stuff, and so does this group, it sounds like. So I have a couple of different avenues there that we can talk offline. We can talk tomorrow about if you need help, actually in prototype development. And I've got some people that are really sophisticated that could help you, or someone who's entry level. I could probably help there. But as far as you might think about a national self-help. I mean, we do it a little bit at the UIA, but quite frankly, we're all volunteers and do it part-time. There might be a niche for getting people together in this sort of format to exchange your thoughts on all this. I think it's a great idea. So anyway, I didn't mean to ramble on, but hopefully that's
Yeah, I might chime in just a little bit. I've been contacted before by marketing companies, but it set off alarm bells in my head, and I would vet it past presidents, and I'd go to like Mary Elroy and I'd say, are these guys on the up and up? And she'd say, no, don't put those people in front of our IACT folks. They just want to sell their stuff. It's going to be a sales pitch. And I said, that's what I thought. And, it's very hard for me as a speaker chair to vet people who are really on the up and up. So I implore individuals who are listening to me now, help me out. If you know somebody who you think is on the up and up and who would be a good speaker for IACT, whether it's in the area of marketing, which I think we really do need, or in some other area, send them my way, because I've got a limited address book. I only know so many people, and I know you guys are going to know a whole bunch more people than I know. So if you have somebody you think would be, good for marketing or whatever, let me know. That would be great.
Well, Doug, and I want you particularly to read the chapter I wrote on the nonprofit mission, because I don't have to say it here, but I do describe one of the groups, like the United Inventors Association. We're a registered 501c3 with a board of directors and all the meeting federal requirements. There's one group who supposedly helps Inventor Club. It's a completely made up organization. It's an extension of the company's business model. And yet, how would you know? It's very difficult to know all these things. So I can also talk a little bit more offline of it. I find that when I name people and companies and go out and get robbed, people get upset for one reason or another, because either they like these folks or so I don't want to get in a big battle. I just want to explain to people heads up who want to learn. So that's my mission. So I see where John has a question. John Pepper, can anyone make deals without a patent? I've had a hard time getting patents issued. That's a really good question. So I could spend the next 2 hours on this one, but it's very, very difficult to license ideas. It just is. And I know there's people out there that are charging and saying, I'm the greatest licensor of ideas. It might have even been easier 30 years ago than it is today. It's probably gotten more difficult, okay? And yet, ironically, patents are a little less valuable than maybe they were 10 years ago too at the same time. So there's a couple different currents going on. The problem is with consumer goods, which is my area of expertise, they don't like to pay, companies don't like to pay an additional royalty. So say they pay you a 3 to 5% royalty, which adds to the cost. That's going to drive the retail up sometimes by 10, 12, 15%, because you got to put a multiple on it. And it's a fact, it is a known fact for anyone who's mathematically inclined, that products sell 67% fewer units at $29.99 than they do at $19.99. And I'm sure you can statistically go right down the rank on all the price points. So bottom line is you can raise the price point if you're going to build in enough margin. But if the margin is not there because it's taken up paying royalties, there's a lot less units sold, and it has an effect on the bottom line of the company. So they don't want to pay a royalty and then have their competition and be at $29.99, and then have their competition not pay a royalty and come in at $19.99. That's basically the bottom line. So it's difficult. As far as filing patents, obviously, you can do some of it yourself, especially with provisional patent applications and PPAs. But I do recommend, when you're talking about converting them to a non-provisional, that you use a legitimate patent attorney who has expertise in your area. One of the benefits of joining a club like this is that there are attorneys I know on the call, and others that I'm sure that Doug can put you in touch with, or some of the experts. Mark has got a lot of expertise in that area. So that's I'm by the way a huge believer in clubs around the country, and I think that's the place to network and ask questions. If you reach out, people can recommend. There's one attorney that comes here on a regular basis, Michael. He's out of Hartford, who does a lot of individual work. Michael, I forget his last name, but he's really good.
Right. Are you thinking of Mike Blake?
Yeah, Mike Blake. Yeah,
Mike Blake lives in Milford, but he was the liaison with the patent clinic, which.
Oh, there he is, right there.
Mike, are you here?
Hi, everybody. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I didn't mean to go blank on your name. I certainly know it. I just forgot on a tip here. Mike's a patent attorney. You can reach out to. Maybe John, you could get Mike's information. Reach out to him or other folks. But patents are still very important, and I write extensively about them in the book and why they're important. And I know, by the way, I'm very involved in a lot of these cutting edge fights down the Capitol. I was there when the 4 inventors from US Inventor burned their patents on the patent office steps, and I know them all very, very well. I know Josh Malone very well, who's a real fighter on these fronts. So I'm all about stronger patents too. But it doesn't mean to say that patents are no longer important. They're very, very important, and you got to get the right help on filing them.
So at the end of the day, I ended up going to the patent clinic at UConn. And aside from the fees that the USPTO charges, I was able to maintain my micro-entity status.
Oh, good.
And we did a filing for a regular patent application. And we had 3 office actions, and I had to file a continuance. So now that's expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
But, I think that it's very typical for these sorts of things to happen, getting one office action after another.
Yep.
And if you don't have a professional to respond, as I had no one to respond when I did my first patent myself, pro se, they say.
Yeah.
I just said, I don't know what to do. He says it's obvious. And I was like, how can this be obvious? It was in a journal and it was peer reviewed. And I worked really hard on this. And they say it's obvious. They must be like Einstein is working in the patent office again or something.
Well, it's even worse, Doug, with, and I'll get to Irina's question on the patent application turnaround time, but it's even worse now with PTAB, because basically they have 300 patent trial and review board, and it's an in-house organization. And I've met with them many, many times, to talk about things we could do to be helpful, but they don't have any qualifications as judges, as real judges, and not necessarily even any expertise in the areas that they're reviewing. And they're going over 5 years of reviews from patent examiners and reversing. Well, right now on PTAB, listen, only products that are successful come before PTAB because someone's infringing and it becomes a battle and they want to avoid court. Of the 3,000 or so that have been reviewed, because right now about 67% that get proposed to PTAB to come back for review there are going forward. So about only 33% get knocked out as being, not necessarily come back through. So the patent stands. 67% are coming back for review. Of those, about 84% have at least one claim getting knocked out. So that's a very, very high rate, and it's very, very frustrating to deal with. And we're trying to make people more aware. So I write about that in the book. And those folks, you wonder, forget about the examiners. I think have a lot more expertise, but in any event. But I see that, and then I'll let Michael jump in if he wants to add to it. But Irina asked, has patent application turnaround time gotten shorter over the years? Well, yes, to some degree, and I'll let Michael jump in more, but Dave Kapos, when he became the head of the patent office a number of years ago, was a very good friend, did a lot of things to speed up the review time. I don't know where it is today, but they have streamlined. It's gotten a little bit faster, but they do now have an expedited patent service that I believe you can pay an extra $4,000 and have your patent go through the entire process within 1 year. So that's an interesting thing. But Mike, do you want to add on? Do you have any thoughts on PTAB?
Yeah, Warren, you're right. Probably about 6-7 years ago in the electronic arts, it was taking 6 years to get a first office action. But nowadays it's much quicker. You're down to around 2 years or so. And it's been holding there. And then Warren's right. You do the accelerated examination. If you're a micro entity, it's only $1,000. But if you're a large entity like IBM, then it is 4 times as much. But you get 2 office actions within 1 year. And so that's quick, but it could be bad news because you get 2 rejections in 1 year too. So you gotta be careful what you wish for.
I mean, everybody wants strong patents, but there's a lot of shareholders in America now, and independent inventors have a different view than the big tech companies. And by the way, there's pharma, there's universities, there's a lot of players in this game, and that's why I joined the United States Intellectual Property Association board. And one of the things we're doing, Mike, is we're and I'm sort of leading the charge on this, is doing a national poll. We're talking about trying to raise $100,000 and do a national poll on what really America thinks about intellectual property, because at the end of the day, that drives the whole mission. But we're about to have a new director of the patent office. Obviously, we have a new president, Andre Yanku, who served for the last 4 years, regardless of what your political views are and what you thought about the last administration. Andre did an excellent job himself of being hands-on and really advanced a lot of good things overall, and was highly respected. But we're about to get someone new. Michelle Lee was the last director in between Dave Kapos and Andre Yanku. She was under Obama. She came directly from Google, okay? So I don't need to explain that any further. So it'll be interesting to see who they select. We have gone back and forth, but inventors and individuals have rights that we're trying to help, and I write about that in the book, and I also write about U.S. Inventor and some of their efforts. They're more of a lobby group than we are. We got more questions? Moses, you want to tell your Abraham and Strauss stories?
Well, I was going to say, somebody wanted to know how to structure a deal. It's in the chat.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry.
and frankly, I don't know how that works either. How do you go about structuring a licensing deal?
Good. Oh, good question. So I'm sorry I missed that. My apologies. So I have a whole chapter on structuring a deal, and the reason I wrote that is because when I first got started 20 years ago, I had no idea how to structure a deal, and I remember coming to IACT and asking that very question about 2005, and I was told by someone who was knowledgeable. I forget who it was at the time. There's a book on royalty rates. And here's the name of it. So I jotted it down. At that time, we were having, meetings in person. And I went down to my local Barnes & Noble the next day. They didn't have the book, but I ordered it. And when it came in, I went to pay for it. It was $350 for this book, right? And I said, okay, I got to learn this stuff, licensing rates and everything. So I got the book, but then I opened it up, and every single chapter was about, and every single category was royalties can be 2 to 7%. So I didn't learn anything from it. So I'm laughing about that now, but I put a section in the book. Licensing deals, the vast majority of licensing deals are based upon licensing your physical property, which is your physical intellectual property, which is patents primarily. Now, it's possible you might have a trademark. It's possible you might have a copyright, but highly unusual for startups to have that. I've done trademark deals. But the better thing is on intellectual property based upon patents. Primarily, you have utility patents and you have design patents. So I talk about that a lot in the book. But once you have your IP in place, and by the way, I've signed a lot of deals. I've never signed a deal on a PPA, a provisional patent application, which is the 12-month starter placeholder. But we do require the companies I work with to convert that to a non-provisional, and we usually pay in advance, which will cover your cost to make the transfer from a PPA to a non-provisional. And then you own the patent, and we license, or the companies I work with license it from you, and that's how it traditionally works. The negotiations, I talk about a lot of that, but they're usually based upon a number of things. Typically, companies want the exclusive use of your technology, your patent, usually in America. Okay, that's where it starts. But you need to think about territory. Should it include Canada and Mexico? Should it include North America? A lot of my deals are North America. Then should it include the rest of the parts of the world? Well, have you filed patents in the rest of the part of the world? Maybe you file the worldwide PCT, which you can read about a little bit more in the book. And if you use a patent attorney like Mike, he can explain it to you more in depth. More people are doing that today to sort of get a placeholder around the world, and then coming back and file it individually in certain countries. But it's quite expensive to go back and file IP in countries. And is it really worth it? Do you really have the ability to do that? Now, I've signed a number of licensing deals where we've licensed the patent within the terms that allows the company to go back out and file around the world, especially a company like Lifetime Brands, which has divisions in Europe, South America, and other places around the world. So maybe there's an ability to do that. So the earlier you get those discussions going with companies, and if you hit the timelines, there's an ability to do that. We do have a whole mechanism in place for Lifetime paying for the patents in those countries, but then those filings become advances, royalty advances towards future royalties, but only from those countries as they were filed in. So it's a pretty fair process. The other things that licensing deals are based upon are typically advances and typically minimum units. Very few people are going to agree to any minimum units in the first year because they got to get tooled and up in manufacturing, but then a reasonable amount. It's never what you want. Okay, they're not going to sign a licensing deal with a minimum unit, a million pieces minimum unit. What they will do is sign one with 50,000 pieces, which means that they've got to put just as much work in to get that out in the marketplace. And hopefully you will sell 1 million. I've had many times that's happened. But don't mistake a minimum quantity that ensures that they get out to market with necessarily their goals or your goals. You have to sort of negotiate around that. Licensing agreements, we usually do, all the companies I work with, we usually do a non-binding term sheet in advance to sort of work out these major issues like minimums, like advances, like royalty percentages. And then I do talk about percentage rates. Most of the deals that I've signed have been between 2% and 5%. The better your IP is, the closer you'll be to 5%. The more cost effective the product is to manufacture, the closer you'll be to 5%. If there's no other brands involved, it'll be closer to 5%. But there's a number of things that might knock that down if the product is expensive to make. If you only have a design patent, your royalty is coming down. I go into all this in depth. If a company like Lifetime has to use the KitchenAid name, who they're already paying 7% to, that might affect it too. So you need to be reasonable and understand at the end of the day, you want them to sell a lot of units because the way to make money licensing is on large volume sales. Okay. So whether you're at 3%, 4%, or 5%, if they sell in the millions, you're going to make a lot of money. If they only sell 10,000, you're not. I don't care if the royalty is 10%, you're not. So I explain all that stuff in the book. I also get into technical things like indemnification, which is companies holding you responsible if you weren't fair and upfront with them. I get into audits and the ability to make sure that they're giving you accurate information and all sort of technical stuff that goes into an agreement. But I do get into that stuff in depth, and in large part, I put extra time into that chapter because of my historical experience at IACT and not getting those answers 15 years ago. So next question, how best to purchase your book? Through Amazon. My publisher is HarperCollins, which I'm very proud of. They're the second biggest publishing company in the world. I put out my book to 30 different companies and got a few offers, and HarperCollins came in. They were the #1 company that I presented to. I'm very excited about that. My agent, by the way, lives in Fairfield, which was just complete luck of the draw. And actually my editor is in, he lives in, I think he might be in Monroe too. He's just north of Fairfield. He's a little upstate Connecticut. Great people. It's been wonderful. It's available on Amazon. And if you do buy the book and you like it, could you please review it? That's the big thing these days. I've gotten 8 or 9 5-star reviews so far in the first week. So I'm very excited about that. But you would go through Amazon. So Mark, okay, Mark, I know you have these hard questions. Okay, I know you're serious. What type of marketing customer acceptance data do the companies you have worked with want to see from inventors? So that's a good question. And are there examples of what independent inventors have done to demonstrate that customers might want their invention? So the answer to the second question is yes, but I will tell you this. Overall, and I don't know why it's getting darker and darker in here. Hold on one second. Let's see. I've not figured out Zoom entirely yet, and I'm in a greenhouse, so I apologize. I'm gonna give a generic answer, Mark, because certainly there's different. Every single submission is different. But for the large consumer good companies, Lifetime Brands, Tectonic Industries, and even merchant media, I'm not saying they're not interested in data. I think sometimes that can help, but they feel if you come into their space, they know a lot, okay? And they are experts in that space, and they will do a lot of their internal vetting and under the right circumstances, check with the buyers and so forth. Now, I happen to think that's a bit of a mistake. And we do in the DRTV space a lot of consumer testing, first through fairly simple SurveyMonkey tests. And we do a first round of that. And we have a whole matrix that we analyze those results and against, so we know what a winner generally looks like. And then we go to a million-piece web test that we get out and actually set up a website and so forth. And then eventually do TV ads that are spot ads that test things. The other companies I work with, TTI and Lifetime Brands, it's more of I think that's a really cool product. It's something we've never done before. It fits into what we're trying to work on product development wise. And inventors have not been required to do a lot of their own testing. Now, when you come to the table with data, it's really helpful, and it really says a lot and takes you to the right of the top of the line. But a lot of times, what does the data mean? You know, if 47% of America says this is important to them, what does that compare to? Some people come with a lot of information because they've been on some of the crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter, and then they go, we can tell from the money they raised that there's some consumer interest in it. Obviously, when people start raising in the hundreds of thousands or even in the millions of dollars, you start to get very serious. And I've licensed a lot of products off that. So there's a variety of ways to doing that. But I would say consumer goods companies are behind the trend. I would say the more sophisticated and larger the company, the more they're into data would be my generic answer. And then I also talk about in the book about professionally approaching companies and people like me, and not coming in like a know-it-all, not doing all the talking, not knowing the royalty rates and everything. But I do also put a section when you come in prepared with vetting the marketplace and data like that. It is always impressive. There's just no question about it. And I like working with serious people. I'm evaluating, and maybe this is a side answer, the person as well as the product. Mark, you and I go back because you made an impression on me the first time we met that you actually knew what the hell you were talking about. Okay, that's really important. And I actually remember people that do. And for companies and individuals that don't get it or marketing, I see their material and I almost dismiss it right out of hand. I can learn a lot about people from, I have a 12-question, submission platform. It's pretty simple, but it's almost like applying to college. I can learn a lot about you from and people submitting just from the way people answer the basic questions, because I look at a lot of products every day and I don't have a lot of time. I have to make quick decisions on who's going to get to the next level quickly. So I'm evaluating the product and how cool it is, whether it's been done before. And remember, I'm in arenas that I know a lot about, but then I'm also evaluating the person, how well prepared they are, how thoughtful they are, whether I think we can work with them down the road, and whether a licensing agreement is even going to be possible, because I can identify some people that I've been through this I've been through this over 100,000 times now, that you're just not going to get a deal done with some people. So I look at all those things, very specific to my own companies and my own little world, but I think very appropriate to anybody on the call today in the arenas that you're in.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. We have been starting at 6. Okay, that's not a question. That's from Doug. Okay. Is there a performance requirement for sales? So yes. So we structure licensing deals to be fair to both parties. Everything that I do is, I'm on the beach. Okay, the beach is an area between the sea and the land. Okay, and I'm trying to make it fair for both sides. And what I'm trying to do is bring two cultures together. And I talk a lot about that in the book, about the culture of big companies and the culture of independent inventors. We definitely, a lot of times inventors will say, give me a forecast on how many you think you're going to sell, like in year 2. And the companies will say, well, we really don't know. And to be fair, they'll put best efforts in getting the product out, but they don't necessarily know to a T how quickly it's going to roll out. It all depends on marketplace success, consumer acceptance, and reorders at the end of the day. So we get back to then minimum requirements, minimum quantity requirements. And again, as I said before, companies are tooling, getting up to speed in the first year. It's very difficult, and they wouldn't accept any sort of minimums the first year. But in the second year, we elevate them, and typically into the third year, and have to maintain those minimums. And if the company doesn't sell enough product to meet those minimums, then the rights of the patent go back automatically to the inventor. And I've done that many times. There's many times when after year 2, we're not doing enough business, and a lot of times the inventors say, would you mind, it's not working out, I'd like to take the patent back. And the companies I work with say, fine, that's not a problem. And I mean, most companies have their own self-interest at heart. And if you're not helping them with sales, they don't mind. The other thing is what I call silos. If your technology works in different industries, for instance, you come in and you have a technology that you've patented, it helps in the housewares area, maybe a garlic press, get garlic through faster or something. But that same technology can also be used, it might be used in commercial kitchenware. That's a different silo. Or it might be maybe the same technology for some goofy reason works in the medical device field with prepping patients or something. A housewares company would have no interest in restricting you to licensing or selling that product in the medical field. So you can also look at different arenas, and you can break down your agreement into territories, into technologies and silos, and in a variety of different ways. And sometimes if you want to sell the product online and continue to do your own thing quietly, a lot of times companies will even let you do that. What they don't want in the consumer goods areas is for you to do something on your own, have the price get advertised and be lower than sort of the map price that the companies use. And then Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, everybody comes screaming back for markdown monies, and it becomes a complete disaster. That's why a lot of times companies also want to control Amazon and what goes on there, because it's a big part of the business now, and they don't want the Wild West to happen there. So there's a whole marketplace sort of ecosystem in the consumer goods areas, and that's why a company like Lifetime Brands has different brands that they put in different stores. But it's all type of stuff that I hate to say it, but I cover it in a lot more detail in the book. You might enjoy reading. Kitchen gadgets, non-electric, worth pursuing a patent, or best to sell directly to the company? Now, if you want to license to a company like Lifetime Brands, and we're the leader in the industry. And by the way, I generally think that if you're going to license, you should go to the industry leader first, if they're open, and because they usually have the most resources, the most brands, and the most shelf space, and the most ability to sell more. And at the end of the day, you want to sell more units. But if you want to license it to Lifetime, I will tell you that patents are important. You can read about that in the book. Will they buy your patents? I'm not sure if that's, I found buying patents, especially if you have no marketplace success, even if you have data, but you have absolutely no real marketplace success, it's a long shot. You're never going to get your money's worth. You're better off getting some real experience to see what the value of that patent is. It's very, very difficult to assume that. So selling the patents, I have never sold a patent. We've discussed it here and there, but it's pretty much a long shot. I'm not sure if the second half of the question, Irina, maybe you could fill in on that, if it's best to sell directly to the company. You can, it's a lot easier to sell directly to consumers today than it was 20 years ago, or maybe even when we first met 10 years ago. You have Amazon now, you have places like the Grommet, which is out of Cambridge, Mass. You have other places you have online. There's a lot more inventors now taking their product directly to market. Of course, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, there's a lot more risk, but if I talk about that a lot, just watch your money. You know, don't fill up the whole garage with product. You know, maybe you want to test a couple hundred, even at a higher cost basis, to see what you've got. But there are more people selling directly to market. Kickstarter from Doug. So I have a very good friend who I feature in the book called Roy Morjan. He's started more $1 million plus Kickstarter raises than anyone in the world. He has over 100 now. If you reach out to me, Doug, I'll give you Roy's email. He's in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is quite sophisticated now with their approach. They have all types of platforms and programs to help take you out. You have to be pretty sophisticated on Kickstarter today. And he can help you with preparing the commercial and all types of things. There are some fees involved with that. But they also have some programs where sometimes they'll take back the money after you've done the raise under certain circumstances. But reach out. Anybody that wants to learn more about Kickstarter or Indiegogo can either read about it in the book and contact Roy directly, who I feature in the book. I feature a lot of really cool people in the book that are friends of mine who I've vetted over the years that I trust, or I'll hook you up with them. I keep getting dark here.
If there are no more questions, then I think I'd like to ask everybody join me in thanking the speaker. Warren, that was a great talk. I thank you very much. This is being recorded, and so what we're going to do is we're going to upload it all, and we'll be able to watch you well into the future.
Well, Doug, thank you so much. Thanks, Doug, so much. And thanks, Doug, for all you've done over the years, continuing the great club there, one of the best clubs in America, and all the people you brought in.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Warren.
Have
That was
a good
very
evening,
enlightening.
everyone.
Okay.
See you next month.
Thank
Lord bless you, Warren.
Excellent.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.